Hi, this is Catherine Schneider from the Fitchburg Historical Society. We are so happy to welcome Pastor Dave Jacobson this morning from City on the Hill Church here in Fitchburg. And so welcome, Pastor Dave. So
Hi.
Happy to have you with us
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you. First of all, kind of finding out a bit about yourself, your pathway to ministry, and maybe your own story. Could you share a bit of that with us?
Yeah, you bet. I actually grew up in the house of a pastor, and so kind of grew up going to the church, and started following Jesus when I was pretty young. But sometimes I think it's a mixed bag on pastors' kids, whether they enjoy the church or maybe get a little bit overwhelmed with the church. I actually loved the church, and so that's part of my story. Is I saw just how beautiful the church is and can be, especially when it's doing what it's supposed to be, and so that's where my first interest in the church began. But then just really sensing just even a call from the Lord to pursue that. And so I actually went to Bible school and had a desire to just work and serve somewhere in the local church.
Great. And could you tell us the history of the founding of the City on the Hill, Church City on the Hill in Fitchburg? Kind of what was the impetus for starting that?
Yeah. So my wife and I actually moved to the Madison area to start the church. We had two of us had met in Chicago and then had been served at a church down in North Carolina for a while, but we had sensed a desire to plant a church, start a church somewhere, and so when we were kind of just looking around, like where to plant a church. I grew up in Monroe, and so for me, the southern Wisconsin area was just very familiar and loved the area, and so we were just kind of researching different parts of the country, honestly, and kind of debating all over the place. And we'd always loved kind of passing through Madison, and I've family in the area, and again, just Dane County and all that it has. And so we were really attracted to kind of the area and decided to start it. So it started in the fall of 2017, so just about 7.5 years old now.
Mm-hmm. So really a new church.
Yes,
new
very
church
much. Yeah.
In these years. And how and why was the name City on the Hill chosen for your church? I know when I drive by on Fish Hatchery Road and see the church, I'm just fascinated by the name that you've chosen, and you know why that was chosen in particular.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we chose the name, is because it does sort of city on a hill. It's kind of unique, but it really speaks to our mission. And when we started the church, we were meeting in Memorial High School. We didn't have a location of our own, and so we were. In the church world, it's kind of portable church, setting up and tearing down each week, and we were meeting there in the auditorium and kind of looking for a place to find a permanent home. And when we started, our church actually had a different name, but we found the property, and anytime there's a church for sale, it kind of piques, as a pastor, it piques my interest. And so I had driven by that church so many times and just thought, man, this is such a great location. We love Fitchburg. And I think our desire was to really find a community to root ourselves and to be present. When you're portable, everyone kind of is, how long is it going to be here, and what does that look like? And so we were able to purchase the building in the spring of 2019. And when we did, it just felt like a good time for us to take on a new name. We had been part of a network that had kind of broken up, and so the name didn't really hold as much significance for us. And then moving into a new space, it's like, we should find a name that really captures who we are. And so part of the name, I think it comes from just, the location. It is sort of set up on a hill, and so it kind of has that look. But there's a verse in the Bible from Matthew 5:14 says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." And it goes on to say, so let your light shine before others. They will in turn see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. And so we really sense our calling, our purpose as a church is to be a city on a hill for the city that we live in, and to point to the hope that we have in Jesus, and why we exist as a church.
Great. Well, and the location on that hill is so prominent and easy to see as so many people are coming by on Fish Hatchery Road. So how would you describe the mission and purpose for forming the church and how Fitchburg was chosen? And I think you've touched on that already, but Fitchburg being such a good location.
Yes.
And maybe describing a little bit more about the mission, purpose of establishing the church.
Yeah, you bet. Our mission, the way that we say it is, we desire to glorify God by making disciples of Jesus. And we unashamedly believe that following Jesus brings life, and that there's joy found in following Jesus. And so we love pointing to and helping people introduce and follow Jesus. And so that's really why we existed and exist as a church. But that's done in community together. That's done as part of the community that you live in. And so kind of to your question about why Fitchburg, we desired to find a location here in the area that we could really establish ourselves and be about and for the community. And so one of the things we love about Fitchburg, and particularly our location in Fitchburg, is we have a community to root ourselves in and to be able to invest in and partner with, but we are accessible to the rest of the area. It's obviously the Madison kind of area. People are coming from all over, and so being right there on Fish Hatchery Road and near the Beltline is just a very strategic location for us. And so and that was really, I think, what drew us to that specific location. But Fitchburg in general, it's just really given us a great chance to be able to establish relationships and be engaged and involved in the community. I think we might talk more about this, but one of the things that we've done is we partner with Leopold Elementary School. We're one of the community partners there. We host a lot of community events or different things, that we're trying to serve and get engaged with the city that we live in. So we really had a desire to invest in the place where we were worshiping.
Great, wonderful. Can you tell us somewhat the makeup of the congregation, maybe the extent of the geographical reach of the church membership, where people come from who belong to the church?
Yeah, it's a great question. My wife and I, when we were starting the church, one of the things that we were specifically hoping and really praying for was that we would have a multi-generational congregation. And so we've definitely seen that happen. So as far as the makeup of our congregation, it's definitely multi-generational. We have tons of young kids and young families, and then we've got established families, and then those that are retired and in their final kind of season of life, and kind of everything in between. And so we love that. And then the other piece is we're actually, as far as, in comparison to the area, a fairly multi-ethnic church. It's especially that little pocket of Fitchburg's pretty diverse. And so, we've been really, we enjoy that we have, several cultures, ethnicities, even languages engaged in part of our church. So it's a pretty kind of broad makeup in terms of both multi-ethnic, multi-generational. And as far as the geography, I would say most come, increasingly, especially now that we have and been there for some time now, 6 years that we've been in the building and here in Fitchburg. We see more and more come from Fitchburg, but we kind of draw from all over. We have, people that come from Janesville or DeForest or Wanakee or sort of kind of all over, and they find us in a variety of ways, but I would say, most come probably from, sort of the southwest kind of area of Madison, particularly in Fitchburg.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you for that. So can you talk a little bit about how the church has evolved through the years? I know it's a fairly short period of time, these 6-7 years. But since its founding, how have you seen it go through change?
Definitely.
Changes?
Yeah, one of the terms that's used a lot of times with churches is a church plant. It's kind of like, you're putting down roots and just getting established. And so very much we felt that in the beginning, and just trying to, figure out who we are and just, get things started. And one of the things that was such a such a blessing, such a cool opportunity was the chance to move into Fitchburg and be in the building. And so I think that for us really gave us a concrete place to be, just establish that foundation and feel a bit more secure in who we were and kind of where we were going to be. And then we all remember that thing called COVID that we kind of walked through. And so
you were right in the midst of that
yeah,
when you were beginning.
we were only 2.5 years old when that started. And so we were pretty, still just a young, kind of newish church, and somewhere around, 150-ish people, I think, at that time. And so for us, just kind of getting established, but, kind of making it through that and coming out on the other side of being able to just gather regularly again. I would say the biggest evolutions that we've seen in the church is just seeing some of our family ministries established. We now have a really vibrant kids ministry and student ministry, and so we have middle school and high school students that are really engaging. Lately, we've been seeing a number of UW students, UW grad students coming and getting engaged, and so we love that. Again, we love the multi-generational piece. But then the other probably biggest evolution is obviously the pocket of the city where we're in is a huge Hispanic population, Spanish-speaking families and homes, and so we really recognized if we're going to reach our neighborhood and be impactful here in our neighborhood, we can't do that just in English. And so a year ago, we actually we had been working towards this for a while, but we hired a full-time Spanish-speaking pastor onto our staff, and then last fall we launched a Spanish service. And so it's not just another church kind of renting space, it's really part of who we are. So now we're meeting in multiple languages. So we have 2 services in English, and then we have a service in Spanish in the afternoon, and it's been fun to watch that grow. And so, yeah, I just think some of those little unique changes and becoming more established has been the biggest changes. But I feel like so much adaptation happened through those those COVID years. So we don't love to think back on that, but it definitely also saw God working even through those times too.
Well, the strength of having come through that, and then I'm thinking you're also looking around at what the needs are in the community and recognizing the large Hispanic population right in your midst, and providing the language for that also. Well, each church has its unique characteristics, and what would you name as maybe the reasons that people are drawn to become members of the City on the Hill Church?
Yeah, I love that question. I think probably the 2 things that stick out to me that we hear the most as people are visiting or sort of checking us out is one, just it's a very welcoming church, and people are just kind and gracious, to each other and to people that visit and come. And so sometimes it's hard to kind of walk into a church and not know anyone or not know what's going on, and sometimes people come in spots of just sometimes they reach out to the church in a place of pain or difficulty, and so we just have a church that's just warm and really inviting in that sense. But then the other side, I would say, is it's our church is made up with just a lot of authenticity. We're pretty passionate about who we are as a church and really the God that we follow. And so I don't know, sometimes I don't want to paint with too broad of a stroke, but sometimes I think when it comes to religion, people kind of go through the motions, and sometimes you can sense that, and there's a variety of reasons for that. But I think in our church, one of the things that we try and do, and I think is kind of generally you'll see in our congregation, is just people that really are passionate about following Jesus and living out their faith, and we believe in the things that we study and follow in God's Word, and so I think that's kind of a unique piece about who we are, and sometimes you don't always see both. You see, sometimes when you're really authentic about your faith, and it's not always the most welcoming. So it's a really great, I would say, cool combination that we've seen develop there in the church.
Oh, thank you for your description of your congregation and how much that means to you.
Yeah.
I can see that on your face and
Yeah.
how you describe it. So what does your worship and programming and outreach into the community look like? I know you've talked a little bit about that, but maybe some more pieces to that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we gather weekly on Sundays for worship, and I would say it's definitely more of a kind of modern style, if you will. We have modern instruments like guitar and drums and that sort of thing, and again, I would say just authenticity in the way that we worship. So on Sundays, our worship really is around the song and then the preaching of God's Word, and so we open our Bibles and study it. Often we walk through books or large passages of Scripture over time, and so we've taken a whole year and walked through a gospel or something like that. So that's kind of what our worship looks like. As far as our programming and outreach, a big part of our ministry is small groups, and so we gather in homes throughout the city and beyond. So we have just a number, I would say, over half of our church is engaged in small groups. We have 160 plus people kind of engaged in small groups on a weekly basis, and so just engaging in life together and studying together, but also helping each other and encouraging each other and walking together in that way. So that's a big part of who we are. It's pretty simple as far as our programming. We do have other gatherings and other ministries, but that's really sort of the central piece of what we do. And then in terms of outreach into the community, we have really kind of latched on to several community events that we do just to really meet and encourage our city. And so we just actually last week hosted a block party at our church and saw, I think we gave out 400 or 500 hot dogs and hamburgers. I think there were several hundred people there, families and kids. And we just started last year, we did a block party for Hispanic Heritage Month. And that one we have a taco truck and a mariachi band and much more Spanish speaking happening, a lot more Espanol at that one than the others. But additionally, we've done like trunk or treat, or we do a Christmas toy shop where we partner with Leopold Elementary School for that and help just families that maybe could use a little help around Christmas time. And so there's toys that are donated by our church that then families that need it come and purchase it at a very affordable price, next to nothing, really. The reason we charge and still pay for it is because parents want to buy something for their kids, and so we try and make it really affordable. But then on Christmas morning, it's like, yeah, mom got that for you. Mom picked that out. Mom bought that, and so we've really seen just a lot of cool opportunities. Like I could go on. We love so many things that are happening in the city, and again through the partnership with the school, or we have a mobile care clinic for pregnant moms that's on our property once a week, just offering ultrasounds and assistance with pregnancy and just a lot of practical ways that we're kind of engaged in the community through those opportunities.
I hear the word community over and over again.
Yeah.
in your own community as a congregation, but then also how you engage the community at large.
Yeah, definitely.
All the wonderful programming you have and events. Well, you are, I would call you the birth pastor of your church, and you've been there since the beginning of its existence. Would you reflect on some moments that have had maybe special meaning for you as a pastor at your church?
Yeah, next to starting, I was thinking about it, this question, but, after launching, I think probably what felt like a huge milestone was moving into the building. And a church is not a building. A church, meets in a building, and it's a great tool for doing the things that we're trying to do. But it was really special getting to move into Fitchburg and now having a home. Before that, it just felt like we were, kind of wandering a bit, and we loved our time in the school, but didn't love waking up at 5 a.m. and moving trailers and dealing with the snow and everything. So that was definitely a huge memory, and seeing that. The other, I would say, is when COVID was happening and just our ability to continue to do the things that we were doing. We were meeting online, or there's small groups of people coming to the church and meeting, but I think there was just a lot of confusion and just even fear at that time. And so we were really investigating, okay, how do we continue to do what we're called to do? And one of the opportunities that kind of got dropped in our lap was we partnered with a government program called Farmers to Families, and we were able to do what we called food box giveaways, over 6 different food giveaways. We gave out, it was the spring, I believe, of 2021. All that timing is a little fuzzy exactly when, but the spring of 2021, we had the opportunity, and over a few months' time, we gave out 200,000 pounds of food into the community, and just were able to not just give out the food, but one of the things that we were doing was just offering prayer and encouragement as people would come through, and just the number of people that took us up on that and said, "Yeah, I would love to have you pray," or just what people were walking through. And so we just really saw that as a really galvanizing, special time in the life of our church to be able to do in such a tangible, unique opportunity. And and I just think seeing the way that God is working in families and watching the church just grow in their love for each other and love for God, and it's just been really special to see. And so it feels like it's been way faster than almost 8 years now, and then feels like a lifetime longer all at the same time. So it's been a cool journey for sure.
Thank you so much, Pastor Dave, to introduce us to the Church on the Hill, and all the beautiful ways that you have been in community with one another and engaged in the Fitchburg community and beyond, and meeting so many needs of people. So thank you so much. And then I'd just like to say that Fitchburg Historical Society also has a website that we would like to invite you to, where interview with Pastor Dave and many others in the community can be found. That's fitchburghistory.org. So we'd invite you to visit that website and find out more about the history of our beautiful city of Fitchburg. Thank you.
Thank you.